Okay.
Yeah, let's absolutely get started. Thank you all for being on here. Thank you all for those that are on the replay. Um, Today's a big day for me and Tammy. We're excited to be launching our book, Challenger Deep: Athletes Rising Above Adversity. And we already had a call scheduled with the college program. And Tammy says, why don't we open it up? And we've done this a few times, and it's been really cool to be able to invite other people into these calls. And so we're grateful for those that are on the call with us and everyone that's going to be listening afterwards. We're grateful for that. Um, Tammy, why don't you start off and let's talk a little bit about Renee and Bethany.
All right. Um, well, I'm going to talk about Bethany first here. I'm not sharing anything, am I?
No, you're good.
Okay. Um, so Jeff and I have had this project going with Challenger and athletes overcoming adversity. And we were kind of at a standstill. And Bethany here came in. I asked her if she wanted to help, with it. And she did so much work behind the scenes that I will never be able to thank her enough. She actually even wrote one of the stories in the book. But she really added a unique perspective. And the dream in my head was to create the second book from Challenger Deep, the first book. And she was able to add a lot of extra nice touches to this book, as well as stories, insights. And I'm just so happy that she added to this. I'll let her speak if she would like to about it. But I can't wait to use it with her teams and hopefully other teams out there. Now, this before I let Bethany speak, this is not just about selling the book. We are actually going to get into some stories and share exercises with you guys of how you can overcome adversity. But we appreciate you, Bethany. Anything you'd like to say about the book?
I will say that we had our first scrimmage and I used one of the stories about Giannis, and my players were unbelievably receptive to it. I utilized some of our reflection questions and some things that they could consider after their match, and really had a tie-in before and after. And I saw a lot of connection that the students had or my athletes had. And it was really great to work on and use my teaching experience to think about questions and ways that young athletes would think of, or really be able to take this information and utilize it, and not just really read it and go on to the next one, but find ways for this to be able to touch back on, reflect upon, and utilize in a way that I think is going to be more effective than if you were just giving them stories to read and not really having the tools that they need to process that information. So I fully enjoyed it, and I liked helping with those questions because I got to use my teacher brain to kind of help tie it all together.
Well, you're a rock star, and we appreciate you. We also have Renee Lopez on here. If you're not familiar with Renee and you have a child that is being recruited, or you're an athlete on here being recruited, you need to get to know Renee. She will help you and help you save lots of money in the process. Renee, would you like to say? She's also read the book, but Renee, would you like to add anything?
Well, I appreciate the shout out. I think I would just love to reiterate a little bit of Bethany's thoughts that what you guys have put together in this book has been phenomenal information. And I think, I was a college coach for 14 years and coached high school for 3 years as well. And I can tell you, I wish I would have had this resource to be able to utilize in team conversations and dealing with adversity, especially after that tough loss, or working with a kid that may have had a serious injury and some setbacks or some frustrations in their playing time. I think these set of stories would have been really helpful for me to have back in the day. So I had the privilege of working with Tammy with my college teams for many years, and it's just such great information that her and Jeff have put together, and I just highly recommend it. If you guys haven't taken a peek at getting that today, definitely get it. They've got some great deals going on Amazon too, so I'll promote it. What they don't want to promote, I'll promote instead, because it's great. I read it during the editing process, and it's a great book. for anyone who's going through some challenges, especially specifically for athletes.
All right. Thank you guys. That's kind of going to lead me into really how all this started. And I'm going to come back to the contact page, but this book came to fruition because I believe in this circle of success. If we have confidence, right-minded focus, and unity, and we know why we're doing something, then we're going to have success. And Bethany and Renee and Jeff here are part of the whole coming together of unity. We can't create success alone. And without the three of them, this dream of mine wouldn't have been able to come to fruition. So whatever it is that you are seeking or striving for, make sure that you're connected and have people that can encourage you, support you, add to what you're doing. I think that's, an important part of success that we often might fail to talk about as much as needed in the athletic realm. But this model is what all of the stories are based off of. You can find it's either about building confidence or helping you with your focus or uniting you with your team, with those around you. So Jeff and I are going to share a few stories, one in each of these areas, and then give you some tools that you can take and help with any challenge that you may be dealing with. Jeff, do you want to say anything before we get started with our stories?
I think one thing just to start off is Tammy and I were involved in a summit a while ago, and she spoke on the power of stories. And I think as athletes, as coaches, as parents, we've got to recognize the power in stories and what they bring to this. I reflect back on Tammy's first book, Challenger Deep. I used to do a daily podcast, Daily Success Strategies, that I did 800 episodes of it. And it's not always easy to come up with those stories. And so that book was very helpful because when I was stuck on something, I'd pull out her book and I was like, that's a great story. I'd talk about it. And so when Tammy brought this to me and said, hey, I want to do an athlete version of Challenger Deep, would you write it with me? I was extremely honored to be a part of this. So thank you.
You helped me see it through, so I appreciate you. All right. We are going to start. We're a little biased here. Michael Jordan is Jeff's and my favorite athlete of all time, something that we do have in common, but we can learn a lot. Yes, Michael Jordan was one of the greatest athletes in his sport, but there's a reason why. It was his mindset. It was his focus. It was his confidence. And so one of the stories, there's tons of stories out there on Jordan, but the one that really resonates with me was it was early on in his career at North Carolina. He was a freshman. He was known as Mike Jordan then, and no one really knew of him. He wasn't, this famous guy that has his own shoe line. And one day he was finishing up conditioning, and Roy Williams, who later became legendary coach at North Carolina, he was like the third assistant in charge of their strength and conditioning. And so he finished their workout, and Jordan and him were walking back to the gym together. And Jordan said, Coach, I want to be the best to ever play here. And Coach Williams looked at him, said, okay, well, what are you doing about it? And Jordan said, well, I beat everybody in sprints and I get up more shots than anyone else on the team. And Coach Williams looked at him and said, my bad. I thought you said you wanted to be the best ever. And he turned and walked away from Jordan. And Jordan said that was one of the defining moments in his career. And it really helped shape his mentality through college and going into the NBA. And what he realized, it's not comparing yourself to others. It's not, hey, at least I'm doing this more than someone else. It's trying to become the very best version of yourself. And so a few tools that you can take and apply to push yourself to be the best and not base it off others. Number one is have process goals versus result goals. Result goals are you want to have X amount of points or stats, or you want to be ranked somewhere. And those are great to shoot for, but those are not always controllable. And so if we focus on the process, what are the things I can control that if I do every single day will help lead to the result goals? You know, I heard a great quote the other day. Process takes the pressure off the person. So let's think about the processes, and that's where you can become the best athlete that you can be instead of having an end result of winning X amount of games or certain amount of stats. And number two, Renee and Bethany have heard this one before. It is one of my always give to teams. I think Jeff's used it with his teams as well. But 5 1s after practice and competition. And what I mean by that, 5 specific things that you did well, and 1 thing that you want to grow on, get better at by the next practice or competition. And that ratio has shown to be the best for growth at any skill. So what we focus on grows. So let's keep growing what we are doing well, but knowing if we want to be the best version of ourselves, then we have to constantly keep getting better and finding that one thing to add every single day. So be like Mike and be the best version of you versus the best on your team or in your conference. And I'm going to let Jeff share someone he actually knows, a famous rodeo.
Yeah, so my background is I've got 20 years of coaching basketball, but I was also a professional rodeo cowboy. And this is Tyson Durfee. Tyson Durfee is a world champion calf roper. He's been the best of the best. He won the world. And I had an opportunity to interview him on one of my podcasts. And we had a discussion about mindset and about becoming the best. And, you know, as Tammy says in The Confident Athlete, that preparation is the foundation of confidence. And that is something that Tyson really emphasized a lot in what he did that got him to be a world champion. And, you know, he talked a lot about as he was growing up and he had his goals and he knew exactly what he wanted to achieve. And that meant that he had to forfeit a lot of the other things that other kids his age were doing. You know, when he was in high school, he would get up at 5 a.m. and, you know, he was shoeing horses. He was practicing his skill. He was doing all these things. And he even talked in that interview about he didn't go to prom. He didn't do a lot of the things that all his friends were doing because he was focused on preparing himself to be a world champion. And he says, what that did for me with my confidence is when I competed, I knew I had worked harder than everyone else. I knew I had done the things to prepare me for that situation. I had that feeling that I deserve it because I've done the work that needs to happen to allow me to win. And preparation is such an important part of confidence. It's hard to go and compete at your highest level of confidence if you know you haven't put in the work. But when you know that you've done that, it's a completely different story. Now, another story that I'll just share quickly is about my own son. Their basketball team was in playoffs, and it was probably about a 45-minute drive from where we are here. And as we got to the gym, the parking lot was packed. And so rather than park and everyone walk in, I just pulled up to the doors and said, everyone get out and I'll go find a parking spot and meet you in there. And I looked back at my son and he had this look of terror in his eyes. I said, Jamari, what did you forget? And he says, I don't have my shoes. Kind of an important piece of equipment for a basketball game. And so, you know, we were, I think, an hour away from game time, and we were about 45 minutes both ways to my house, but I didn't get a ticket. But when we talk about creating a preparation game plan, Tammy has created a really cool sheet that we use with our athletes, that just the simple things. What are the things that you need to do to prepare yourself for a competition, whether it's practice, a game, whatever, so that you can go through that preparation checklist and make sure you've got everything ready so that you can focus on the things that are important, that are going to help you be confident in that game. So you're not getting to the game and not having your shoes. And my son now, especially, this last little bit, we've been going to football. It's like going through the checklist, making sure you've got everything before we leave to do that. And so, just like the quote on the screen says, confidence is preparation, and everything else is beyond your control. You can control preparing for what you're going to do, whether it's putting in the time, putting in the practice, or putting in the game plan to make sure that you have the resources to be ready to compete and not be distracted by not being prepared.
And Jeff, at the end, we'll share with everybody that we are giving you a link. Well, we're giving you some freebies and some other resources, but there is a resource page that you can go to without having to buy the book, and it'll show you a copy of a preparation game plan. So you can see that. Just make sure you take a picture of the link or get the link. So you'll have lots of free resources with that. Before I get into the next story, I was watching North Carolina versus NC State women's basketball. And NC State coach sent one of his players in, and she got ready to go in, take off her warm-up, and you could see just this dead look on her face. She had forgotten to put her jersey on underneath. So, like Jeff's story about his son, forgetting equipment can be really embarrassing or add a lot of stress, but there's so much more to preparation than just your uniform and equipment as well. There's emotional preparation, there's mental preparation. So make sure that you get a copy of our preparation game plan, and then make yourself one that tailors to your need, to your sport. All right, unless you're a runner out there, you may not have heard of Desi Lindsay, but as a distance runner, she's kind of dear to my heart. She's one of the best American runners. And for about 8 years, she had tried to win the Boston Marathon and really struggled and had some bad outings. So 2018, this was going to be her year, until she woke up and she didn't feel that good about her body, about herself. And the weather was absolutely horrible. Icy, windy, rain, and just miserable conditions to run in. So as she started running, she was like, okay, this isn't going to be my day. But what I'm going to do is put my attention to a fellow American runner and try to help her have her best day. And she tells the other lady this, and like, tell me what you need, I'm going to help you. Well, what ended up is she ended up winning, and she became the first American female to win the Boston Marathon in over a decade. And what had happened, and what studies show us, that when you turn your attention to helping others, it actually helps you, because it releases chemicals that actually give you more confidence, give you more stamina, give you more positivity. And we also, if we turn and try to help a teammate, we're no longer focused or dwelling on all the bad things or the challenges that we're facing. So making sure that you're united with teammates, fellow runners, if you're a runner or a swimmer, when you're united with them, it just gives you a little bit more of a collective confidence. So next time that you're really feeling challenged, turn your focus and attention to a teammate, especially when, okay, this is not my day, or man, I feel horrible today. Or instead of getting in your head, turn your focus and attention. We can't have two thoughts at one time. So instead of thinking, today's not my day, turn the thought to, who can I help? And that will give you the best chance to get out of your head. And even if you don't get out of your head, you've at least fueled and helped a teammate. And then number 2 is one of my staples as well, TNT. It stands for talk and touch. And there's actually another story in the book dedicated to that completely. But talk and touch separates champions from runners up. And there's actually a study done on that. But teams that talk and touch the most end up winning championships over the runner-up. So that's that fist bump. That's the high five. That's picking up someone off of the court or the ground. Just cheering them on. You know, it's not a touch, but pointing at them is, you know, it's like a touch. It acknowledges that person. And then talking to them. But talk and touch goes a long way to unifying and connecting teams and teammates. And I forgot to say this with the circle, but we've talked about confidence, we've talked about focus, and we've talked about unity. But what ties them all together is your why. Why are you doing what you do? What's the bigger picture to your sport? And Jeff actually came up with this story to share. So I'm going to let him bring it home and wrap this up together.
You bet. Thank you. You know, the power of your why is something that I've put a lot of focus in for the last few years because it is such a powerful tool. But this story here about Bruce Lee, I first heard it back in September. I was in Florida at an event and heard someone tell this story. And so I did a little research and learned a little bit more about it. But if any of you know who Napoleon Hill is, he wrote many famous books, Think and Grow Rich, and some of those. But in Think and Grow Rich, he talks about your definite chief aim. And this is something that Bruce Lee did. And I actually want to read the definite chief aim that Bruce Lee wrote out for himself. He said, I, Bruce Lee, will be the first highest paid Oriental superstar in the United States. In return, I will give the most exciting performances and render the best of quality in the capacity of an actor. Starting in 1970, I will achieve world fame, and from then onward till the end of 1980, I'll have in my possession $10 million. I will live the way I please and achieve inner harmony and happiness. Bruce Lee, January 1969. He had a definitive purpose. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he had a strong why behind it. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about is the power of that why, understanding why you're trying to achieve the goals that you are. And that's something that's really powerful when we work with athletes is talking to them about why they have specific goals and what that is. And so the first thing that we'll talk about here is it's very good. It's a powerful tool to write out your definite chief aim. And it's something that I encourage people to do that comes from the 1923 book, Think and Grow Rich, is to read that definite chief aim a number of times a day, first thing in the morning, before you go to bed at night. I have mine sitting here on my computer, but it's a powerful tool to use. But you need to understand what your why is behind that whole definite chief aim, behind your goals. And there's a process that I learned from Dean Graziosi that is a really powerful tool called the 7 Levels Deep. And a lot of people think they understand what their why is. You know, I have this goal and here's the purpose behind it. Here's the why behind it. But when you go through this process of 7 levels deep, it really gets it more to a deeper emotional level. And when you do that and you've got a real solid why or purpose, it makes it so much easier during those hard times when things aren't going great, when you don't want to get up for early morning practice, when you're having a tough time, to still stick to your goals because you have a deeper why that's going to push you. And as Tammy talked about earlier, this is in the book, but we also have our resources pages that you can go to that has all the resources from the book that you don't have to have the book to access that. And so that's what we will give you. And you can use this QR code here, or if you go to the resource page, I've done a training on how you go through the 7 level deep process to discover what your true why is. And it's something I personally do for myself and with athletes that I work close with, do it at least every 6 months. Because one of the things that happens is as we achieve our goals, as we grow and become better, our goals change. We change. We're a different person than we were 6 months ago. And so to really stay on top of that and understand what your why is a powerful tool.
You know, it's so true, Jeff, that my why now as a mental game coach, I always had a why, or I do have a why when I'm training for something. but my why as a mental game coach is to help athletes get off of the confidence roller coaster sooner than I did. And what I mean by that, confident when you're getting the results or feedback, but when you don't, going down, but helping them learn how to have a steady baseline of confidence. But there are days I get up and I don't want to Zoom. I don't want to have to be positive. But I have my why written, on my bathroom mirror on a sticky note. And that's one of my first things that I do in the morning is to read that and read it while I'm looking at myself in the mirror. And 9 times out of 10, that really helps shift my mindset to, okay, it goes from I don't want to do this to, hey, here's another chance to make a difference. So I've seen the effect in my life, definitely in sports, but even in the job I do now.
That's awesome. And you know what? That's so true, is having it somewhere that you see it all the time and repeating it to yourself all the time. Every morning I do my group accountability calls, and before everyone talks about their accountability, they state their why, because I want them to be thinking about their why every day. For myself, every morning in my mindset journal, as I'm writing out my goals, before any of my goals, I write out my why statement. And so to have that presence all the time is a powerful tool.
So here's some ways. Well, first of all, your why has to be greater than your want. And I added this because I saw this the other day. I don't know who to credit, but I loved it. Success follows you when you find a why that's stronger than your want. Like, I don't want to get up and go to practice today. But when your why is stronger than giving into that want, or I don't want to have to eat healthier, or I don't want to have to, whatever it may be, that why has got to be stronger, that just kicks that want out of your head. But here's some few ways to bring your why to life. Repeat it first thing in the morning, just like I shared. Repeat it or say it to a teammate before practice and competition. Again, I learned some of my best ideas from athletes, coaches, and teams I work with. And I had a softball team that actually said, hey, this is how we're putting it into play. And they're like, as we're warming up with our teammate, we have to say our why out loud to each other. So before we go into practice or the competition, that's at the forefront of our brain. And I love that idea. And then after practice, ask yourself, did you live your why? Parents that are listening, instead of hey, how was practice or how was the game? First question to ask your children should be, hey, did you live your why? So that keeps the focus on making sure that stays at the focal point, and that's the most important thing. Because if they're living their why, they're probably on their way to reaching their goals. I could spend about an hour talking about our why, but anything else you want to say on that, Jeff?
You know what, just as you're talking, there's so many things that we teach with these athletes that I'm like, you could talk about all these different things, the 5-1, all these different things. Again, when we share the resource page, and obviously get the book, and these are in there, but there's a lot of these things that, especially for parents and coaches, that are helpful to helping you understand your athlete and help them grow from a different perspective.
All right. So here's the free resource page at the bottom of this slide. If you go to that link, then you'll have all of the resources that Bethany and Jeff and I collected. Again, shout out to Bethany. She found a lot of podcasts or videos that really help supplement these stories. But also today, just a reminder, today only through midnight tonight, ebook for Challenger Deep is $1.99, and the paperback is 20% off. It goes up tomorrow, so really encouraging you guys. I know I'm a little biased, but it's a good resource. Growing up, if I was in church or school and the preacher or the teacher told a story, I was 99% more likely to remember the message. If they just started lecturing at me, mentally, I tuned off. So I know the importance of storytelling in my life. And I think it's really a resource that sometimes we forget of how we can better reach our children and our athletes and help them really rise above adversity. Second thing behind this book, sometimes we look at these elite athletes and we think, well, yeah, that would be easy if I was good as Michael Jordan or Bruce Lee or the 28 other athletes we have in this book. But the thing is that it's not that they haven't had challenges. It's that they fought and rose against the challenges and allowed the challenges to take them to a higher level. We all need adversity. We need adversity to show how good we are, how capable we are. But too often we try to avoid it, run from it. But that's actually what we need for us to be our best. So we hope this book can really help elevate you as an athlete or your athlete.
Absolutely. And let me just add in there, I know we get, because coaches and stuff are involved, I know we get a lot of teachers. Tammy and I are not math teachers. So when you look at that 20% off, 20% is the new 29. I found that out today when I was talking with someone.
You get 29% off today.
You get
Even better.
29% off, yeah.
All right. Another free resource that we want to give you is the free confidence calendar that I put out at the beginning of each month. You can sign for it with this QR code and it'll go to your email every month. And at the bottom, you can go to my shop and there's actually a link where you can get the PDF as well. So take a picture of these resources or reach out to Jeff or myself if you want any of them. The next offer, well, other resources, we can't leave Renee out here, but mark your calendars. March 7th at 8 p.m. Renee and I are going to do a webinar on confidence and overcoming adversity in the recruiting process. If you're not familiar with Renee and what she does, you need to follow. That's a misprint there. We all have challenges, but it should be educating high school parents on the recruiting process, not education. But Renee is phenomenal in helping athletes find the right school for them, resources to help them get recruited. So please follow her, join us that night. Both of our pages and social media will have a lot more information, or send me an email if you want to make sure that I send you the link to join. And then, Jeff, do you want to speak about the Confident Athlete online program?
Yes, absolutely. The Confident Athlete program is something that Tammy and I have been doing together. It's such a powerful program to help athletes develop a powerful mindset and really maximize their potential. It's really a differentiating factor between what your athlete is and what they can be, because so many coaches, athletes don't realize how much the mental game plays into their sport. And we've wanted to create an irresistible offer. In fact, I did have Tammy shared some feedback with me this week that someone had said, you're just giving away too much. So what we're doing is we're giving away a free trial of the Confident Athlete program for 14 days. We want people to come in, give it a try, see what it's about, see if it's for them, and it's no commitment. In addition to that 14-day free trial, we put together what we call the Mental Strength Success Secrets, which are some tools that your athletes and you as coaches, you can implement immediately on the mental game, whether it's the self-talk, the body language, and the different things that are involved there. So this is an incredible program that really can help your athletes get to that next level. And so we really encourage you. And well, go ahead, Tammy, if you want. I just want to check on one thing.
And while he's doing that, the last offer, and then we're going to wrap this up, but exclusive book discount for you guys only that are on here. If you happen to watch it before noon tomorrow, all books that Jeff and I have available on Amazon, we are offering 25% off just for you guys being on here tonight. But that will expire tomorrow. So if you're listening to replay, jump on it tonight, jump on it as well if you don't have one of these books. But before I wrap it up, Jeff, did you want to say
You know,
something?
I just wanted to double check on the link because I didn't want it going to the old website, but it's all directed to the proper one. And you can just use confidentathleteprogram.com and that will take you there.
All right. Well, we hope you've enjoyed the 4 stories for elite athletes of how they've used challenges to rise above. There's so much that we can learn from watching and observing others. And I tell that to my athletes a lot. Yes, do we sometimes need a mental game coach one-on-one or online program or a book? Yes, but we can learn so much just by watching and learning what others do, what to do or what not to do. So I really encourage that as a learning tool. But confidence is created by what you do, say, and think on a daily basis. And it really does help us focus better. And it really, if you're a confident person, you're going to be naturally more united with your teammates. So it is a complete circle of success. So if you have any further questions about how the mental game can help you, or about adversity, overcoming adversity, we would love to hear for you now. We're going to take some Q&A if anyone has any questions for the next few minutes.
You know, one thing
while we're
I'd
waiting-
like,
Go ahead.
I was just going to add in too, you know, one thing that I really liked is hearing from all those teams that used your first book of Challenger Deep and how they used it as teams. So if you take this book and use it with your athletes, use it with your teams, please share your stories with us. It's awesome to hear how people are using it, the impact it's having on players and teams. And so any of that would be incredible if you'd share it with us.
Or if you have any questions. While someone's thinking of a question or brave enough to ask a question, Bethany or Renee, do you have a favorite story from the first Challenger Deep or this current one?
One of my favorites is always the Laura Wilkinson diver story about her visualization. I think on that story probably once a week, and the power of visualization. And just as a tennis player, I've continued to play, and I've really implemented this aspect of visualization, which is not something I feel that I did much of as an athlete myself. So this story really kind of led to a big connection that I made with the power of visualization. And I always go back to that one and revert to that one back to both players and for myself when it comes to challenges that I'm facing as both a coach and player.
Awesome. Thank you, Bethany.
Mhm.
And I think Renee's getting ready to say something, but just without giving away the story there, the power of visualization is important all the time, but especially when you're injured or for some reason can't practice or compete, it can really help prevent you from getting rusty or in your head. So if you're not using visualization, I would highly encourage it. If you'd like to know how, reach out to Jeff or I. Renee, what do you have for us?
Well, Tammy, you use this with my college teams many times, and I think it is something you covered in your first Challenger Deep book, and I think it was such a great visual, and it was the idea of burn the boats, and the idea of when things aren't going well, let's take the lessons we learned from it, but let's not keep looking backwards. Let's look forward, and the idea of let's be all in 100%. And that I know the story's great and where it comes from, but the idea is really thinking back to what you'd went through, learn the lesson, but keep moving forward. And the idea of having the mindset of that we're going to be all into our mission as a team and as a unit. I think that was a great story.
Love it. That is one of my favorites, especially when we get to burn the boats, literally.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. We'll tell all those stories at a different time.
But that story is the importance of being all in and committing yourself emotionally, not just physically and mentally. But any other questions about anything that Jeff and I have shared tonight, or anything on the mental game? We would love to answer whatever questions you have or hear your comments. Well, our emails are available. So please, if you have something that pops up, please reach out. Renee, why don't you put your email in the chat as well, in case somebody wants to reach out to you about recruiting. I'm going to end with a story, my favorite story of all time, that has created a lot of this whole energy for me to seek out stories. But before I do that, Jeff, anything that you want to leave people with?
No, I appreciate everyone that's jumped on here, everyone that is going to be listening to the replay, and please use these resources to help yourselves, to help your teams get to that next level. These are powerful tools to use.
All right, well, I'm going to finish with "This is good." I wear it on my wrist. I have a book titled it, but I think it's a perfect way to end this. So there was a king in Africa, and he had his best friend that he kept with him wherever he went, because no matter what happened, the best friend would be like, "This is good." So they go hunting one day, and he loads the king's rifle for him. Well, it backfires and blows the king's thumb off. The king is irate, throws his best friend in jail. All the way to the jail, the best friend was like, "This is good." He's in jail for a year and a half, and every day saying, "This is good." Other people in jail were like, "You're an idiot. This isn't good. Your best friend threw you in jail." "No, this is good." And in the meantime, the king goes out on another hunting party, and they're captured by a band of cannibals. Well, the cannibals are going to kill and eat them one by one, but they were extremely superstitious and did not believe in killing or eating anything that wasn't whole. And they saw that the king didn't have his thumb, so they let him go. King's like, "Oh my gosh, my best friend saved my life." And he runs back to the prison, gets down on his knees, and begs for forgiveness. The best friend, of course, says, "This is good." The king says, "I know it was good for me. You saved my life, but I have wasted a year and a half of your life." The best friend was like, "No, no, it's good for me too. For you see, if I had been with you, I could have been killed and eaten." Very dramatic from what we hopefully have to deal with on a day-to-day basis in sports. But it was like one of those aha moments when I first read that African folktale. And it really changed my life personally, professionally, and in every aspect. And what I started doing was, okay, this might not be good in the moment, but how can I keep my brain alive long enough to allow something different, often better, to come in? And so that's what I like to challenge athletes. When you have that loss, which I hate losing, I'm still working on being a better loser. But when you have that loss, what is good about it? Instead of letting it take away your confidence or blaming teammates or coaches. And if you often look at championship teams, almost in any sport, they had a loss or a couple of losses, which they look back on, and that was a defining moment for us. What is good about an injury? I've had numerous, injuries, and sometimes you can play, get in that, having that, throwing that pity party. But if you can keep your brain alive long enough, what is good about this? Maybe I'm going to work on my mental game now for the first time, or I can work on getting another skill better. Maybe you needed a break that you wouldn't have taken if it hadn't been for that. So those are two of the biggest examples, but playing time, not playing the position you want, it's easy for us to focus on that short term, not getting that result we want. But asking yourself, what is good about this, keeps your brain open and allows for something better to come in eventually. So this is good. This has been great that all of you guys have joined us. I hope everyone's gotten something from it. And we look forward to hearing from you in any way that we can help you.